Did you notice that one of our Torah mantles is not like the others? Can you see the beautiful new white mantle made of raw silk, the one embroidered with the blossoms? It is the handiwork of our congregant and textile artist, Jody Bager. When I asked Jody this summer if she would help, she did not hesitate. She began sketching immediately, and soon sketching turned into stitching. Jody spent many late nights by the lake, stitching the stories of October 7th into what would become a sacred object, a protective mantle for the holy book, which has sustained our people throughout the millennia. Why a new mantle? Because I knew we would need some kind of memorial, something that we could see and touch and remember. I knew our joyful day of Simchat Torah was at risk forever of being downcast by the shadow of October 7th. Hamas chose a holy day and a day of dancing intentionally, of course, another layer to their cruelty. Each year at this time, we will dedicate this Torah mantle, and it will signal to us that we must take up acts of defiance. Because swirling around the fabric are the poetry of the biblical author of Ecclesiastes, who asserts, "Eit tzvod ve'eit rekod." There is a time to wail, and there is a time to dance. Swirling around the fabric is the charge from the survivors of the Nova Festival, who insist, "Od nashuv lirkod," we will dance again. This Torah mantle will soon be carried on Simchat Torah, and it will give us permission to dance again. Our teenagers will parade our many Torah scrolls across the balconies, and our consecration students who are just beginning to learn Aleph Bet will wave their flags and march proudly next to the scrolls carried by their parents. We will turn last year's nightmare into a joyful dream of the Jewish future. On Simchat Torah, we will fulfill the double instruction from tomorrow's Torah portion, Uvacharta b'chayim lema'an tichyeh. Choose life so that you may live. I hope you'll join us for Simchat Torah, the one-year anniversary on the Jewish calendar. With tears in our eyes, we will dance and we will sing, Am Yisrael Chai. The Jewish people lives. The Jewish people is alive. When the survivors of the Nova Festival say we will dance again, it isn't their youth or their innocence talking. After everything they've witnessed, after everything they've endured, there is no more youth or innocence for them. Youth and innocence were stolen from them, along with many friends and relatives. No, we shall dance again is a defiant call to courage. And it is about this kind of courage of the Spirit that I'd like to speak with you tonight. The modern Hebrew word for security is bitachon. You see it written everywhere in Israel, at airport security checks, on portable barriers that mark the paths for demonstrations on the streets each week, along imposing border fences between Israel and its neighbors. And the government's Ministry of Defense is called Misrad HaBitachon. But long before the modern Hebrew word bitachon came to mean physical security, long before the Holocaust challenged pre-existing Jewish theologies, bitachon was a religious concept, and it still is a spiritual category of faith. Our history is filled with examples of individuals and entire communities that were physically threatened, but walked through life with their heads held high because they knew God's nearness. To have bitachon is to have trust in the future, because there is trust in God. The psalmist says, Adonai tzvaot ashrei adam boteach bach. Contented is the one who trusts in you, O God. And Yom ira ani elecha evtach. When I am afraid, I will trust in you. Bitachon is not a simple faith. It never was. Our ancestors did not survive because they put their fate only into God's hands. No, the psalmist instructs us, B'tach b'Adonai va'aseh tov. Trust in the eternal God and do good. That is, trust in God that there is a future worth living for and work for it. Bitachon is a partnership of forces, the divine and the human. Bitachon is a partnership of wills. God will look after the long run, the big picture, the eternity that we can never know and can't even begin to imagine, while we must do what must be done in the here and now. We can do our part because we believe God will do God's part. We believe there is a larger plan, a greater destiny for the Jewish people, a greater vision for all of humanity, and that each of us has a role to play in inching the universe in that direction. These aspirational outlooks, these are one of the many gifts that the Jewish people has given to the world, and it's much more than optimism. It's even more than hope. Bitachon is what comes before hope. Bitachon is the spiritual confidence that enables us to be hopeful. Bitachon is the spiritual courage that empowers us to strive for the future we seek. The Nova Festival survivors model bitachon for us when they say confidently, Od nashuv lirkod. And the soldiers who are spending this Yom Kippur on the front lines, may God watch over them. They exemplify bitachon for their small children when they put on their uniforms and promise to return home again. They can go off to do the hard thing because they trust in something larger, because they believe the tiny land of Israel and the tiny people of Israel, that is, the Jewish people, have roles to play in God's mysterious plan for the world. How could it be otherwise? After 3,500 years of tears and triumphs. Not long ago, I heard the word bitachon come through the voice of my friend Dotan. I called her on the Sunday morning after the beeper attack, when retaliatory rockets were raining down on the north where she lives. And in typical Israeli fashion, Dotan said, "Yeah, we're okay. I live in an old house without a safe room. Maybe we'll build one. But for now, last night I ran 3 times to the shelter. And yeah, it was okay. I saw my neighbors, and I decided that today I should go and buy myself a new car." And so I did. This is bitachon. Trust that not only will she survive this 7-front war, but trust in the fact that there is an actual road for her to travel upon into her future. There will be trips that she will want to take, and there will be dear ones that she wants to visit. And there are simple pleasures in life which must be embraced even in times of war. Good people, I know how worried you are. I see how it weighs on you. I know how all of these trusts of many different kinds have swiftly eroded over the year now past. Many trusts have been shaken or shattered. Trust in our city, trust in our elected officials, trust in the press to tell the whole truth, not half-truths, and certainly not lies. Trust in our teachers and institutions of higher learning. Trust in our neighbors and our co-workers. Trust in fellow citizens who just this week took to the streets and openly called for the death of Jews. Now, they were relatively few, But how can this be allowed to stand in the streets of our city? And beyond these external breaks and betrayals, many of us wonder if we can trust in ourselves. I've seen over the last year how our inherited generational trauma can get the best of us, and we do not know if we can trust in the future. So I've come tonight to tell you that this is forbidden. In the language of Yom Kippur, to despair like this is sinful. To doubt ourselves in this way is unnecessary and it is ineffectual. Moreover, it is exactly what the haters want. They want to terrify and terrorize us, and we must not give them that satisfaction. Again, the psalmist urges us, Ashrei hagever, asher sam Adonai mivtacho. Contented is the one who trusts in the eternal, and the one who doesn't turn towards the arrogant or towards followers of falsehoods. Our ancestors did not only bequeath to us an inheritance of trauma and sorrow, they have also gifted us a legacy of faith and courage and commitment to create lives of meaning and purpose and impact. We must find our way to bitachon, to the courage of the Spirit that will move us to action. Betach b'Adonai v'aseh tov. Trust in the eternal and do good. And the verse continues, Shechon eretz ure'ei emunah. Abide in the land and remain faithful. A powerful example of spiritual courage comes from another time of violence and destruction when Jerusalem was being attacked by the great Babylonian army in the 6th century BCE, and the Temple Mount was set to torch. Jeremiah, known as the Doom Prophet, did the most remarkable thing then. He purchased real estate, not in Babylon or in Egypt, but in Israel, then called Judah. Knowing that his people would be carried off into exile in chains, and knowing full well that he would not live long enough to see the return to the land, he nevertheless invested in the future that he trusted would come to be. He took the long view. He tried to see the world through God's eyes. From his prison cell, he drew up the contract, had witnesses sign it and seal it and bury it in an earthen jar for safekeeping. Jeremiah, whose name means God will raise up, bought a field that would only be cultivated by future generations he could only begin to dream about. And it wasn't a bet or a wager or a long shot. It was a promise. It was an act of faith in the future. So let me ask you, what deeds have you signed? What contracts with the Jewish future have you drawn up? What covenant with your great-great-grandchildren have you renewed? What long view are you able to dream about? Every act of faithful courage now is part of the story which will unfold. Our Machzor insists that in the book of life, no small deed goes uncounted. So when you take up a hard conversation with a friend who is good-hearted but misinformed or misled, or when you take up a hard conversation with elected officials, school administrators, or leaders in your workplace, people who are well-intentioned but overwhelmed and likely frightened themselves, or when you are generous to worthy Jewish causes here and in Israel, and when you do Jewish, when you light Shabbat candles, when you cultivate a personal prayer practice, when you pursue sacred study, when you schlep your kids or grandkids to Hebrew school, when you build a sukkah or plan your next trip to Israel, every one of these is an act of bitachon, It is a pledge to the future. And none of these acts is inconsequential. These are necessary promises now. When is spiritual courage, when is bitachon required of us? When is hope so necessary? Not when things are easy. Spiritual confidence and the capacity to hope which follows are necessary when things are terrible, when things are broken, when we are afraid. Now is such a time. Israel is fighting for its life. And we are striving to maintain a safe place for generations of Jews in the diaspora. The West, including Canada, is struggling to protect its democracies from destabilization. My prayer for 5785 is that trusts will be restored, that fellow citizens and people in positions of responsibility and power will earn back our trust, that governments throughout the world, including Israel, will win back enough trust to map out visions of physical security and peace for our people and for all peoples. Now, I am an optimist by nature and by nurture. But I have to admit to you tonight, this night of truth-telling, that I am not optimistic about the immediate future. It pains me to say this in the presence of our elders who sacrifice so much to protect the world from tyranny. It pains me to say this in the presence of the younger generation who deserve so much better than this. I am sorry. Al chet shachatanu lefanecha. Forgive us for letting things slip. Forgive us for not seeing clearly enough. Forgive us for not insisting on better, for shrugging off the signs. Forgive us for laughing off all the hateful things spoken and unspoken. But don't get me wrong. While I may not be optimistic for the short term, and I believe it's going to be rough for Jews here, there, and everywhere for a while, I am nevertheless very hopeful. Optimism is easy because it doesn't require anything of us. As Rabbi Jonathan Sachs teaches, optimism is the belief that things will get better. Hope is the belief that together we can make things better. To be optimistic requires no courage. A certain naivete suffices, but to hope is an act of great courage. No Jew knows the history of our people written in tears. No Jew who knows it can be optimistic, but no Jew can live without hope. That's why Judaism is, for me, Rabbi Sachs says, the voice of hope in the conversation of humanity. Judaism is the voice of hope in the conversation of humanity. And hope, prompted by spiritual courage, is what changes the human condition. A lot of people are asking me this day, Rabbi, am I permitted to be hopeful in a world like now? Yes, so long as we know what we mean by hope. I believe it is not only permitted, but it is required. Hope is not a feeling. Hope is an action. Hope does not allow for illusion. There can be no pretending now. We cannot be false prophets to our children. We must not lie to ourselves or to our families. But it is also a lie to say that there is no hope. In a world that is full of lies, we must only tell truths, including hard truths that we wish were not true. The hostages have to put hope in us. The wounded have to put hope in their bodies' ability to heal. The tens of thousands of evacuees and displaced people have to have hope that the borders will be secure again and that they can return home again. And our children here and throughout the diaspora must be nurtured in hope and nourished by hope. Let us raise them with Jewish identity strong enough to withstand the oldest hatred. Let us raise them with enough Jewish joy to outshine any fear. And let us cultivate in them an inner life of the Spirit, a relationship with the divine, a prayerful imagination, which has been the secret to our survival and a core religious principle of Judaism. Not a naive hope, not a belief that things will change tomorrow, they won't, but to have faith in the future. This is essential, and we must be willing to work for it. I'd like to end where I began, with our new Torah mantle, which is dedicated to the memory of Adi Vital Kaplun, Aleha Shalom. Adi was a young mother who bravely and brilliantly saved her entire family when terrorists broke into their home on Kibbutz Cholit. Adi was the cousin of our congregants, Cynthia Nathanson, Sophie and Talia Rivers, and of our cantorial soloist, Lindy Rivers. Adi's parents, Jackie and Yaron, are coming to Holy Blossom on October 29th. I hope you will come and bear witness to Adi's harrowing and heroic story. Just a few months before October 7th, Adi wrote these words, now engraved on her headstone, a lasting testimony to the bitachon that she carried with her wherever she went. As a dancer, as an athlete, as a soldier, as a scientist, as a daughter, wife, and mother, Adi exemplified spiritual courage and quiet confidence in the future. Such bitachon brought her, a Canadian citizen, to build a home on the farmlands along the Gaza border. Such bitachon sustained her as a mother who protected her children fiercely until her very last breath. Such bitachon prompted Adi to write this poem, a reflection on how to live in a dangerous world, with trust in the future, nevertheless. With my baby lying on my chest, everything looks so good. And the good is still there, even when my baby is not so close. Like magic powder carried by the desert wind. We are both wrapped in green and dream. Reality sometimes knocks at the door, but we put it off to another time, when we will have to answer whether we are here or we are not. Shomer Yisrael, Shemor Sherit Yisrael, Ha'omrim Shema Yisrael. O guardian of the people Israel, we pray on this holiest of nights that you will protect the remnant of your people Israel. Remember that we are the ones who pray Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. See how we strive in courage and commitment. See how we strive to walk with you into a future that is worthy of your blessing. Amen.